Candace rolled her eyes the moment I opened my mouth, and that was right when the Harvard Chancellor rose to his feet, placed his hand gently on my chair, and said, "That woman you just mocked funds our entire cancer research program." The room froze. Candace's glass hung midair. Her smile vanished. Subscribe if you have ever been mocked in a room you quietly helped keep alive. All I had said was thank you. I stood up to offer a few simple words honoring Aunt Renee's retirement after 40 years of teaching, and within seconds, I was reduced to a punchline. Candace had already spoken, of course, flawlessly as always, with jokes, applause lines, and old stories meant to charm the room and reinforce her crown. She had always been the shining one, the one who made success look easy. I used to think she had earned it, but when I stood with nothing rehearsed, nothing flashy, just quiet gratitude, she rolled her eyes loud enough for the whole table to see. And then the Chancellor stood. "I was not scheduled to speak," he said, steady and calm, "but I feel it would be wrong to let the night end without recognizing someone whose quiet generosity has saved more lives than any of us will ever know." That was the moment. That was the line that made the air leave my body. If you have ever stood in a family that only claps for the loud ones, tap subscribe, because this story is yours. I did not look at her. I could feel Candace watching me now, but I did not meet her eyes. My hands stayed folded in my lap, but my chest felt like it was breathing for the first time in years. The Chancellor's voice continued. 5 years ago, this university's cancer research division was on the brink of collapse. Grants had dried up. Experiments were being shut down. Promising cures were abandoned midstream. And then he paused. A donation came in. Anonymous, unrestricted, generous beyond anything we had hoped for. A hush fell over the tables. That gift kept our researchers employed. It let us continue studies that have already reached clinical trial stages. And then came another gift, and another, each time anonymous. Each time with one simple note: keep going. He turned slightly, facing me. That donor is Clarice Monroe. She is seated with us tonight. It felt like the room tilted. Even now, weeks later, I cannot fully explain that moment. My heart beat so loud I could barely hear the silence around me. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to weep. But mostly, I wanted to believe I deserved this. For 1 second, I thought maybe I had imagined it. But then the Chancellor placed his hand softly on the back of my chair. "Clarice, on behalf of every researcher, every patient, every child waiting for a cure, thank you." He said it like a benediction. I nodded. Not because I knew how to receive a moment like that, but because some part of me had waited a lifetime to be seen. Across the table, Candace's face drained of its practiced charm. Her mouth opened as if to say something clever, but no words came. I did not feel triumph. I did not feel revenge. I felt released. The woman who had erased me with a glance now sat stunned in front of the one truth she had never bothered to learn. She never asked what I did for a living. None of them had. I was the nice cousin who helped with party cleanup, the one who mailed cards and remembered everyone's kids. I never wore the right clothes or used the right words. I sent checks to cousins who needed books and quietly bought plane tickets when someone's flight got canceled. I was background, until I wasn't. Because tonight, in front of a room full of scholars, donors, and family who had never truly seen me, someone stood up and said my name. And I realized I never needed them to notice. I only ever needed to know I was real. If you have ever been left out of the toast, forgotten in the photos, or laughed at by people who thought they were better, you are not alone. What happened that night was not revenge. It was recognition. Not loud, but lasting. And it was only the end of a chapter. The beginning that started far from Harvard in a folding chair with a paper plate in my lap, watching Candace open birthday presents while I collected the gift wrap. The rest comes next. And it will speak to the child you were when they made you feel like less. I was the girl who folded chairs. At every family party, I stayed behind and stacked the folding chairs while others posed for photos in new dresses. No one ever asked me to do it. I just did. I used to think it was kindness. Years later, I saw it for what it was, a space they were comfortable leaving me in. It started young. I was quiet, observant, the kind of girl who brought her own book to her cousin's baby shower. Candace was the opposite, shiny, loud, always surrounded. I was always just outside the frame. Still, I loved showing up. I loved setting things up. My mother said family shows up where they are needed, not where they are celebrated. I took that to heart. But slowly showing up became a pattern of staying small. There was the birthday where I spent the afternoon helping in the kitchen while Candace's photo was printed on the cake. There was the graduation party where I held someone else's baby while the family took group photos and matching shirts. They never meant to erase me. They just didn't notice I was missing. And I never told them. Because deep down, I wanted to be included on their terms, not as the helper, as the one they invited without asking me to bring napkins. I remember once overhearing Aunt Renee say, "Clarice, oh, she's just the single one who's always good with kids. She's sweet, kind of invisible, you know?" She did not mean it cruelly. That was the worst part. That night, I went home and cried in the car for 20 minutes before going inside. Then I made a donation to a local literacy program, a big one, under a private foundation name. It helped me breathe again. It became a habit after that. Every time I felt like I was disappearing, I poured that ache into something real, something generous, something permanent. You could say I started building my revenge in monthly grants. Only it was not revenge, it was restoration. The wedding invitations started showing up one by one, RSVPs, addressed to my sister, my cousins, even the teenage niece who had just started dating. Nothing came for me. I checked the mailbox every morning that month with a strange hope in my chest. Not desperation, just curiosity. A childlike wish that maybe, just maybe, this time I would be thought of. But the envelope never came. When I finally got the group message from Candace's assistant, "Please let us know if Clarice can assist with setup," I just stared at the screen. It was not malicious. It was worse. It was unthinking. They had not forgotten me. They had assigned me to the role I had always quietly filled. I typed a reply and deleted it. Then I called the catering company and covered the gratuity for the entire reception team. Anonymously. That was how I existed in my family, quietly improving things they did not know needed improving. A silent shadow making sure the lights stayed on. But something changed in me that week. I realized I had taught them how to treat me. I had shown up early, cleaned quietly, never spoken out, never corrected anyone who said I was just the babysitter. So that is who I had become. I cried again that evening, not out of pain, out of understanding. I was not angry at them anymore. I was disappointed in myself for making silence a survival tactic. And then something inside me whispered, "Enough." I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I pulled up the Harvard grant reports from the foundation, all the anonymous contributions I had made over 5 years. I clicked the box that said, "Include your name in the next press acknowledgement." It was a small checkbox, but it felt like kicking a door open. I was not supposed to be there. That is what Candace said later, trying to save face. "I didn't think you'd actually come." But I had received the invitation just like everyone else. A crisp white envelope with the Harvard crest, Aunt Renee's name embossed in gold, and my address spelled out in careful script. For once, I was not added last minute. I was invited on purpose. Still, I hesitated. It had been years since I attended anything family-related, without carrying food or folding chairs. Years since I showed up in a room where I did not expect to serve. But this time, something felt different. Aunt Renee was retiring after 4 decades at Harvard. She was the only one who had ever hugged me after my mother's funeral, and whispered, "You're allowed to want more." That voice stayed with me, so I booked my train ticket. I bought a navy dress with long sleeves and soft pleats, simple earrings, and one white rose. I checked into a modest hotel the night before not far from campus. I did not tell anyone I was coming. I just showed up quietly the way I always had. But this time I arrived not as a helper, not as the girl folding chairs, but as a woman who had outgrown the room. Subscribe if you've ever entered a space that once made you small and felt your own quiet strength begin to stretch. The gala was held in a cathedral-like hall, lit by chandeliers and tall windows that swallowed the last light of evening. Tables were arranged in neat rows with candles, crystal, and centerpieces of ivory orchids. It smelled like wax linen and old money. The kind of smell that makes you straighten your posture even when no one's looking. I found my name card near the middle table between Dr. Elston from the biochemistry department and someone named R. Whitaker. I had no idea at the time that Robert Whitaker was Harvard's chancellor. I just noticed he had kind eyes and wore a tie with the university crest. Candace made her entrance 10 minutes late in a red gown that shimmered with every camera flash. She had always been radiant. When she walked into a room, it tilted toward her. She waved air-kissed colleagues, complimented shoes she hadn't looked at. Her confidence was so fluid it made everyone else second-guess their own. She stopped 2 tables away and saw me. Her eyes narrowed for half a second. Then she smiled like nothing had shifted at all. "Oh, Clarice, you made it." I smiled back. Wouldn't miss it. She did not ask how I was. She turned to someone else before I finished speaking. And just like that, I knew my role had not changed in her eyes. I was still the extra, the assistant, the quiet cousin who brought flowers but never headlines. The evening unfolded with practiced grace. Speeches wine more speeches. Candace gave her toast second. It was clever and biting, equal parts admiration and self-promotion. She recounted childhood memories with Aunt Renee, included a few Latin quotes for good measure, and ended with a flourish. "And we've all come a long way," she said, glancing at me. "Even Clarice, who used to file Aunt Renee's mail and now delivers the roses. Full circle, right?" The audience chuckled, not cruelly, but knowingly. I froze. My hand still resting on the tablecloth, my name still echoing behind their smiles. I nodded slowly as if to agree, but inside something trembled. Not from shame, not even from anger, from grief. The kind you feel when you realize someone never grew to see you differently. I was still the helper in her story. And then the man beside me, the one with the Harvard crest on his tie, stood. "I was not scheduled to speak tonight," he said, steady and calm, his voice carrying easily to every corner of the room. But I would regret saying nothing. The room quieted. Forks stilled. Candace's glass hovered near her lips. "We gather tonight to honor a legacy, 40 years of teaching, mentoring, and research. But there is another legacy here, less visible but no less vital. A legacy built not with lectures or publications, but with quiet faith in what science can still become." He paused. 5 years ago, Harvard's Cancer Research Division was weeks from shutting down. Promising projects stalled, grants fell through, labs emptied, and then someone gave. He looked at me, not once, but again and again, quietly, anonymously, with one condition: no name, no spotlight, just keep going. Candace's fork slipped slightly. Her eyes widened. The chancellor smiled gently. "That someone is seated beside me tonight." I could not breathe, not out of panic, but out of disbelief, out of years of silence that were suddenly impossibly being heard. He placed a hand on the back of my chair. "Clarice Monroe," he said, "funded the hope that now runs through this university's research. She never asked to be known, but we would be wrong not to thank her." I did not stand. I could not speak. I just nodded, and my hands stayed folded in my lap, but my chest felt like it was breathing for the first time in years. Across the table, Candace's mouth had gone slack. She looked as if the ground beneath her had quietly shifted, and no one warned her it was coming. But I did not meet her eyes, because in that moment I was not there for her. I was there for the girl I used to be, the one who served quietly, listened carefully, and built something from the pain no one ever asked her about. And for once, I did not have to explain it. The room already knew. The gala had ended, but its echo followed me like perfume. I rode the elevator down to the parking level alone, clutching the folded program from the evening like it was something sacred. My name had never felt so heavy, and yet for the first time it belonged entirely to me. I did not speak to Candace that night. She avoided me as if I had turned into someone else, someone she did not recognize, or maybe someone she had always tried not to. But that silence did not last long. 2 days later, Aunt Renee hosted a brunch for close family and out-of-town guests. I had not planned to attend, but the invitation arrived directly handwritten, so I showed up, not for Candace, for myself. The dining room was set in pale golds and soft linens like always. There was fresh fruit, mimosas, a piano playing in the corner. Candace stood near the entry greeting guests. Her voice trilled like a hostess on a television show. When she saw me, her smile flickered. "Clarice." "So glad you could make it," she said, one arm still around a woman I did not know. I nodded. "Thank you for inviting me." She blinked. "Of course. Family brunch." I walked past her and sat near Aunt Renee. A few chairs down I heard someone say, "Was that your name on the gala donor list?" "The foundation was that you," Candace laughed lightly. "Oh, that it is a shared initiative. I help manage some of the logistics. Clarice does back-end stuff." For a moment I wondered if I had been too generous. But then I remembered I had never done it for her. The moment sliced through the air like a paper cut. I kept my eyes on my plate, My hands stayed folded in my lap, but my chest felt like it was breathing for the first time in years. I was about to excuse myself when a woman across the table leaned forward. Her name tag said Associate Dean Pediatric Research. She looked Candace square in the eye. Actually, no, Clarice Monroe is the principal funder. Your name was not on the endowment, I checked. Candace's face twitched. Oh, well, yes, she's very generous. Aunt Renee cleared her throat. Clarice has always had a quiet heart. But I suppose we never asked how much she was giving. I said nothing, because it was not mine to explain anymore. The moment passed, the music picked up, the clink of cutlery returned. But something in the room had shifted. For the first time, I was not filling a space someone else had defined for me. I was occupying my own. And they had to adjust. The letter arrived a week later, tucked in a lavender envelope written in Candace's looping script. I held it for a day before opening it. It began the way her apologies always had, vaguely sweet, uncommitted, dressed in soft phrases. I suppose I underestimated your work, she wrote. You've always had such a subtle presence. Subtle, not silent, not steady, subtle. She went on. I was surprised to see you at the gala. And even more surprised to hear what you've been involved in. I guess I just didn't think of you that way. As if success had a look, or voice, or public announcement. Then came the twist. I would appreciate it if going forward you did not involve family matters in professional events. It was jarring to be asked about you at my own celebration. My hands trembled, not out of rage, out of grief. Because even now she could not say, well done. She could not offer I was wrong. Just a request to stay small. I folded the letter gently and placed it in a drawer, and then I did something I had never done. I wrote one back. It was not long, but it was final. I told her I spent my whole life shrinking to fit inside your memory of me. I do not live there anymore. I mailed it without return address, and for the first time in years I slept through the night. That week I received a call from the dean. He invited me to speak at the dedication ceremony for the new research wing, now completed, funded in full. It would mean a lot to our students, he said, to know who was behind the quiet work. I hesitated, not because I did not want to go, but because I was learning to enter spaces not with apology, but with certainty. I said yes. Then I bought a new pair of shoes, soft leather, nothing flashy. And on the morning of the ceremony, I stood in front of the bronze plaque with my name engraved on it and wept. The ceremony was smaller than the gala, but somehow more sacred. There were no chandeliers, no velvet tablecloths, no flutes of champagne passed on silver trays. Just a soft breeze moving through the courtyard, a podium at the foot of the new research wing, and a standing crowd of about 70 students, faculty and physicians, some in white coats, others in second-hand shoes, all gathered for the same reason, to honor the woman who had saved their work from disappearing. Me. And this time, for the first time, I let them say my name out loud. The new wing was built for pediatric oncology research. It had been underfunded for over a decade, running on scraps and borrowed time. Quietly, over 4 years, I had funneled grant money, equipment donations, and scholarships through Monroe Therapeutics. The program had survived and then flourished, not because someone cut a ribbon on the evening news, but because someone believed it mattered. Now that belief had a plaque. It was mounted on the far left wall in bronze, tucked just under the entry arch. The Clarice Monroe Foundation, in honor of quiet hands and persistent hope. I stood in front of it that morning alone before the crowd arrived. My fingers traced the edge of the metal letters, warm in the rising sun. I felt no rush of pride, only a stillness, as if a breath I had been holding since I was a girl had finally been released. If you have ever waited your whole life to feel seen, not applauded, just seen, this is for you. Subscribe if you know what it means to arrive in your own name. I heard a voice behind me. Miss Monroe. A young woman, probably in her mid-20s, hair, pulled back, badge clipped to her coat. She looked like she had not slept in days. I just wanted to say thank you, she said. The research you funded, it helped my brother. He's in remission now. I blinked. She continued. We used to think we were out of options, but that clinical trial, it gave us a shot. And now he's starting high school next fall. He's learning the cello. I smiled. Does he like it? She laughed softly. He loves it. His arms shake from the meds, but he says it makes him feel strong. We stood there a moment, two women bound by something neither of us could measure with words. Then she reached out, touched the plaque, and said, "I hope you know this means more than you'll ever hear spoken." "I do now," I said. After the ceremony, there were a few short speeches, one from the dean, one from a tenured oncologist, who admitted he nearly left the field when the funding dried up years ago. "I stayed because someone kept the lights on," he said, looking directly at me. Even when we did not know her name, I kept my remarks short. I said thank you. I said the work was never mine alone. I reminded them that cures are collective. Then I stepped back from the microphone and let the wind speak for a while. Aunt Renee could not attend. Her health had become fragile, but she sent a note. "Clarice, I read every article about the foundation. I keep them in a folder marked, 'The niece I should have asked about.' Thank you for reminding me that quiet does not mean absent." I cried reading that one. Candace did not write. She did not come. She did not call. And I did not expect her to. That part of my life had ended in a letter I no longer reread. Some stories do not need sequels. They need silence. Her absence at the dedication did not feel like rejection. It felt like release. For years, I had clung to the idea that healing would come when they finally acknowledged me. But healing came when I stopped needing it from them. My name was on the wall now, not because I demanded it, but because it had earned its place. Through the years, through the service, through the faith that sometimes, if you just keep showing up, the world eventually tilts toward truth. I have seen too many people give up just before being recognized. Too many quiet workers, too many soft-hearted builders, too many women told they were only valuable when invisible. If that is you hear this, your voice is not small. It is simply steady, and steady things outlast the noise. My cousin rolled her eyes when I spoke. But the chancellor stood for me. And in the end, it was not her voice that filled the room. It was mine. The girl who folded chairs did not need revenge. She needed a name on the wall, and now she has one. If you have ever waited to be seen, to be valued, to stop shrinking in rooms you helped build, this story is for you. Subscribe for more stories where quiet power rises and healing doesn't come through revenge, but through remembering who you are.